It is a pleasure to be here and indeed for the RICS to be part of this partnership working in this important area and being a supporter of this initiative to stamp out what we're seeing in our modern world. As you've just heard, I am a surveyor and a member of staff at the RICS, and perhaps initially a confession that we probably have come late as a professional institution to waking up to the reality of this problem and addressing it with our chartered surveying membership. But I'd like to reiterate our support as part of this team to move forward in this area. And I'm going to be talking very briefly about the initiatives that we have been working on, particularly in the area of ethics, which will of course be central to that which we seek to do in changing hearts and minds and taking real action to move forward in this area. Just some slides which very briefly outline the institution, and you may or may not be able to see the small print, always the casualty of producing slides with tiny print on them, but really we're capturing there just a flavour of our vision to be recognised as a leading body in the surveying profession, and as you will know, that covers land and property and construction. And we've been doing that as an institution since 1868, so it's our 150th birthday next year. Not as long as the ICE, who are even older than us, but nevertheless have been doing this and working in these fields for a number of years. We're not the only professional body, as has already been mentioned, who are seeking to set out codes of practice and standards, but our particular built environment and property field is one that we focus on. Our Royal Charter, as others, say very clearly that whatever you do must be in the public interest, especially in this area of removing this practice, given that we all will agree it has no place in a civilized society. Let's just look at RICS worldwide. We have 125,000 qualified members, and the graphic just shows you where they are distributed within the world. Now, clearly a strong focus within UK and Europe. That's because of our historic associations with the property world in this country and also other places in the world where chartered surveyors work, tends to be historically those countries which are Commonwealth or former Commonwealth countries. But clearly the illustration that we give there of the global reach of the institution enables us perhaps to speak into this subject because we have members who are working in, what's the graphic? Again, a tiny graphic for you, but in the middle there, working currently in just under 150 countries of the world. So a great reach, great spread of influence to be able to work not just with construction and property in the UK, but across the world as well, especially in other countries where perhaps cultural norms are not the same as our own. That one just tells you what we do. I think you know what we do as surveyors. It's all about measurement. Our motto is measurement in everything. If it moves or even if it doesn't move, we can measure it for the good of the world's physical assets and their enhancement. Now, our strapline very strongly presents the picture that we are going to build confidence, public confidence in what surveyors do through professional standards. And what does that look like? That, of course, shouldn't be on that second line. My skills on building slides are not as good as they should be. That M, of course, should be at the end of the next line. Sorry about that. But professionalism and our entry standards require proven levels of knowledge and experience maintained certainly within the international perspective. And as surveyors, as do all professionals, requiring to continue with professional development through their career. We also regulate, and that's a very common action that we take to make sure that standards are maintained. Over 10,000 surveying firms across the world are regulated by RICS, bringing that confidence, we believe, to a market and ensuring that firms protect themselves and their clients and do the right thing. Now, what about doing the right thing? Well, overlaid across what you do as a surveyor and an architect, and having mentioned architects, I'm wearing a suit. I've got a tie on, so I clearly cannot be an architect. I think we may well come back to that later in the day. That's my suspicion. Overlaid across all of the technical standards, the way you do your job is then doing it properly, doing it ethically. So although we have standards which we've written and have launched in terms of the measurement, internationally collaborating to arrive at standards for the measurement of property, how big is this room? How much is it going to cost in terms of construction and anything to do with land, perhaps relevant in a more rural environment. All of those technical standards are also overlaid by other, perhaps softer and more behaviour-based standards. So as well as working in this area of modern slavery, we have standards on things like anti-money laundering and corruption and bribery in the construction industry, another whole area of consideration, conflicts of interest, and the whole rules around surveyors holding client money. And then we could start to move into all of the data handling areas and all the issues that arrive around those professionally and providing that confidence. What do all those add up to in the equation? They add up to client confidence. And we are maybe, I don't know, other institutions will probably do the same thing, but in terms of surveyor education, the whole testing of the students' knowledge is also included with ethics as well. This is a very important aspect, we feel, that students, as they come through their training, are also aware of the ethical standards that they're to meet. So there's a cool picture of the City of London. Professionalism and ethics, those are the things we expect of our Chartered Surveyor members. And as I've said before, not just surveyors, but also all professionals. So as well as technical standards, we've been looking at working with other professional bodies around the world as a coalition, working together to come up with a consensus that said, what does ethics, what does doing the right thing, what does it look like? And the principle behind our work in coalition is to arrive at an overarching set of global principles that reaffirms in real estate and property and construction those standards that are meant to be met in respect of today's global market. Very busy slide, I'm afraid, I'm sorry. There's a screenshot of the front of the standards document. Here it is, here's Exhibit A. This was published right at the end of last year, having consulted with over 100 professional bodies and other interested stakeholders around the world to arrive at a set of broad principles which set out ethical standards for the way we do things. It's high level, it's international and global, and the intention is then that individual countries adapt that ethical standard, that framework, to suit the particular requirements of their own local market and their own cultural norms. And that's what flows from enabling the initial framework at a global level. What about the RICS then, and specifically focusing in now perhaps on construction? As you will be aware, chartered surveyors work, many of our members work in consultancies advising clients on construction projects and act therefore as quantity surveyors, cost managers, building surveyors, project managers, building surveyors and so on. But not only that, clearly we have Chartered Surveyor members who work for developers. It's not just about consultancy, but it's actually client side as well. And indeed, Ed is here from Landsec and will be speaking this afternoon on the perspective from the developer side. Now, we obviously work as RICS members on those projects and work with contractors. So whilst many of our members are somewhat separated from the coalface of directly influencing the supply, the procurement and the supply of labour as it's fed into a construction project, clearly we have the ability to be influencers and those that, as you can see on the slide, set out the contractual framework. So there's clearly an ability there to say, this is not right, and we're going to write into the contract, this is how we should act in respect of stamping out modern slavery. Now, it's easy to write into a contract something. The challenge is then to police it or to make it work in reality on the construction project. All the way through, from the original procurement of the project through the construction on site. I think we would all agree it's a challenge. It's actually not something that's going to be solved overnight, and we are therefore seeking to bring influence as an institution through our membership to the supply chain work that contractors do. We seek to influence our members to raise awareness in this issue. We have come late to this, as I've said before, and we intend to raise that awareness of a problem. I suspect many of the members of the RICS, particularly working in the UK, would say readily, I don't think it's a problem. We haven't got an issue in the UK, have we? I'm not really aware what's going on elsewhere, and indeed I'm in my own little bubble and I'm not sure I know much about it. So we plan to run a communications campaign to members to raise awareness for the debate to commence and continue, and to seek, we trust, working collaboratively with others on this topic, engaging in relevant parties to support initiatives to eradicate modern-day slavery. We can do better together rather than just us as a single institution. Thank you.